Sometimes life doesn't give you parents. It gives you someone even stronger. For me, that person was my grandmother, Evelyn Grace. She raised me in a small wooden house on the edge of a quiet American village. Surrounded by endless fields and whispering trees, people called it the Forgotten Valley. But to me, it was home. The house of silence. I still remember how the floorboards creaked whenever Grandma walked. A sound that meant safety, warmth, and love. Our kitchen always smelled like fresh bread and cinnamon. She'd hum old country songs as she kneaded the dough, her voice low and broken, like she was singing to someone who wasn't there anymore. I'd sit on the counter, swinging my legs, watching her hands, those wrinkled, hard-working hands that carried decades of pain and strength. Me. Grandma, why don't we have pictures of Mom and Dad? Grandma, softly. Some memories are better kept in the heart, child. She never talked about them. I was told they died in an accident when I was 2. That's all. And as a kid, I didn't ask too many questions. I was happy. Or at least I thought I was. The town that whispers our village was small. Everyone knew everyone, but there was always something strange about how people looked at us, especially me. Old Mr. Jenkins from the grocery store would stop talking whenever Grandma entered. The retau, church ladies whispered behind her back. Even my teacher once said, "You have your grandmother's stubborn eyes." But she didn't mean it kindly. Grandma ignored them all. She never explained. She just held my hand tighter and said, "Grandma, let them talk, child. The truth has a way of showing itself, when it's ready." I didn't understand what she meant back then. But years later, her words would haunt me. The warmth and the wounds Grandma worked hard. She cleaned houses in the village and sometimes helped at the local church kitchen. We didn't have much, but she made sure I never went hungry. Every night before bed, she'd sit by the window reading a letter, the same letter, over and over. I once asked her about it, me. "Who wrote that letter, Grandma?" "Grandma, someone I loved. Someone I lost." Her eyes glistened, but she never said more. I was too young to see the pain behind her calm smile. The night of the storm one night, when I was about 10, a storm hit our village. The roof leaked, thunder roared, and the lights flickered out. Grandma lit a candle and held me close. I could feel her heart racing. She whispered things I couldn't understand. Maybe prayers, maybe memories. Grandma, whispering, "You're safe with me, child." I promised him. I'd protect you. Him? I wanted to ask who she meant, but her eyes were full of tears. It was the first time I saw her cry. The hidden photo, a week after that storm. I was playing in the attic, my favorite place in the world. Dust, old boxes, spider webs. It felt like a secret world. That's when I found it. A small, cracked photo hidden under an old blanket. It showed Grandma, much younger, standing beside a man I didn't recognize. And a baby, me. But the man, he looked nothing like the pictures of my father I'd seen before. His eyes were dark, almost haunting, and his arm had a tattoo, something like a number and a symbol I couldn't understand. I ran downstairs holding the photo. Me. "Grandma, who is this man?" Grandma freezes. "Where did you find that?" Me, in the attic. "Is he my father?" She snatched the photo from my hand, trembling. "Grandma, you must never speak of him again. Promise me, me. But why?" Grandma, sharply. "Promise!" I nodded, scared. She tore the photo in half and threw it into the fire. I watched it burn, along with every question I never got to ask. The years that followed, as I grew older, Grandma's health began to fade. Her hands shook, her steps slowed, but her love never changed. Even when she was tired, she'd smile and say, "Grandma, don't worry, my little sunshine. My time will come, but you'll be okay." I finished high school, got a small job in town, but I never left her alone. We were all each other had. People still whispered about our family, about what she did, but I never knew what they meant. and she never told me. The final winter one cold December morning, I came home to find Grandma sitting by the window, holding that same old letter. Her lips moved, whispering the words she'd read 1,000 times. Then she looked at me and smiled. Weak, tired, but peaceful. Grandma. Promise me something. Child, me, anything. Grandma. When I'm gone, look in the wooden chest under my bed. You'll find everything you need to know. I tried to laugh, told her she wasn't going anywhere. But she just smiled again. That kind of smile people wear when they already know the truth. The day she left 2 weeks later, on a quiet morning, the sun rose over the frosted fields. The birds sang softly outside. I made tea, just the way she liked it. Strong, with honey and milk. But when I walked into her room, she wasn't breathing. The cup fell from my hands. My heart froze. Me, voice trembling. Grandma, wake up, please. She looked peaceful, like she'd just fallen asleep. On the table beside her bed lay the same letter, and a small key. N. The chest under the bed, I couldn't move for hours. The house was silent, empty. That night, I remembered her words. Look in the wooden chest. My hands shook as I pulled it out. It was heavy, old, locked with rust. I used the small key she left behind. Inside were photographs, letters and a journal wrapped in a faded red ribbon. On top, there was a note, in her handwriting. Note. My dear child, if you're reading this, then I'm gone. It's time you know who you are, and what I did to protect you. That night I couldn't sleep. The sound of rain tapping against the window reminded me of her voice. Soft, rhythmic, comforting. The wooden chest sat in front of me, open like a wound that had finally been cut open after years of healing on the surface. Inside lay her secrets, everything she had hidden from me. From everyone. The Journal of Evelyn Grace. The first page of the journal was dated June 3rd, 1959. The handwriting was neat, elegant, the same way she used to sign my school notes. If anyone ever reads this, it means I am no longer alive. I have carried this burden too long. My only wish is that my grandchild forgives me. My hands shook as I turned the pages. What I read next didn't feel real. And the story, she never told Grandma. Wrote about growing up in the same village, back when it was smaller, poorer, and far more judgmental. She mentioned working at a farm owned by a man named Richard Miller, a wealthy man with power and influence. She was just 17 when she started. Richard was married. But that didn't stop him. He promised me love, protection, a future. I believed him. I was young, foolish. When she found out she was pregnant, she hid it for months, but in a small village, secrets don't stay buried. When people found out, she became an outcast. Her parents threw her out. Richard denied everything. She gave birth to a baby boy, my father, the baby and the betrayal. He had his father's eyes, she wrote, but Richard never came to see him. Not once. She raised him alone, working in kitchens, cleaning barns, sleeping on floors. When he turned 16, he went to confront his father. Richard refused to acknowledge him, called him a mistake. That night, my father ran away. I searched for him everywhere, for months. The police said he joined a group of drifters heading west. I never saw him again. I felt my chest tighten as I read those words. My father wasn't dead in an accident? He ran away? Everything I'd been told, every bedtime. Story about the car crash was a lie. The Tiu, stranger in the photo I turned to another. Page, there was a photograph taped inside. The same man I'd seen in the attic photo. But Grandma's caption under it made my blood run cold. His name wasn't Richard Miller. His real name was Richard Hale. He wasn't just a farmer. He worked for the government, something secret, something dangerous. She wrote about strange men visiting their house late at night, how they'd whisper about operations, witnesses, and keeping quiet. She didn't understand it all, but she knew it wasn't legal. She once overheard, Richard mentioned a list of names that can't ever come out. When she got pregnant, he panicked. He told her to get rid of the child or disappear. She disappeared and started a new life under a different name. Evelyn Grace, the secret that never died. I could barely breathe as I read on. Grandma mentioned moving from town to town, changing her identity, finally settling in our village. She lived quietly, until one night, when a stranger came to her door. He was tall, thin, wearing a black coat. He said he knew about Richard. He said there were still people looking for that list. He told me to burn everything I had from that time, photos, letters, even the birth certificate. I did. Except for one letter, the one he wrote me before I left. I couldn't burn that. My eyes darted toward the letter that was still on her bedside table. The same letter she'd read every night. That letter wasn't from love. It was from fear. The letter's truth. I opened it carefully, afraid it would crumble in my hands. The ink had faded, but the words were still clear. Evelyn, you must disappear. They know about the list. If they find you, they'll use the child to get to me. Go far away, change your name. Don't ever tell anyone who you are. I'm sorry for everything. If we meet again, it won't be as lovers. It'll be as enemies. My body went cold. My grandmother hadn't been protecting me from gossip or shame. She was protecting me from something much darker. My father didn't just run away. He might have been taken. Or worse. The missing pages at the end of the journal, I noticed something strange. Pages had been torn out, several of them. The last entry ended abruptly. If anything happens to me, the truth will be in the old oak tree behind the house, under the roots. The past cannot stay buried forever. My heart pounded. The old oak tree. The one where I used to play as a child. The one Grandma always said was sacred ground. I grabbed a flashlight and ran outside. The rain had stopped, but the air was thick, heavy. The field glistened under the moonlight. The box beneath the tree. I reached the tree, dropped to my knees and started digging. The earth was cold, damp and stubborn. My fingers hurt. Nails cracked, but I didn't stop. Finally, my hand hit something hard. A small metal box. I pulled it out, covered in mud and rust. Inside were documents, old photos, and another envelope. On it, written in my grandmother's handwriting, "For when you're ready to know the truth about your father." The truth about my father. I tore it open, heart racing. There was a photograph of my father, older, standing beside two men in suits. Behind them, a car with a government emblem, and a short note written by Grandma. He found me. He told me he was working for them now. He said he forgave me for hiding him, but I could see it in his eyes. He wasn't the same boy I raised. He left that night, promising to keep me safe. But I haven't heard from him since. My throat tightened. She had found him. He was alive, but changed. What had he become? Who were they? 10. The shadow at the door. I sat there under the oak tree, frozen in shock. Then, suddenly, headlights. A car stopped near the house, the sound of gravel under tires. I hid behind the tree. Clutching the box, a man stepped out, tall, wearing a dark coat. He looked around, as if searching for something. My breath caught. His voice echoed through the cold air. "Man, you shouldn't have opened the chest." I froze. How did he know? I stayed frozen behind that old oak tree, my fingers still muddy from digging up the box. The man's shadow stretched long under the moonlight. He wasn't moving fast. He didn't need to. He already knew I was there. The stranger speaks. His voice was calm. Too calm. "You look just like her," he said. My heart stuttered. "Me? Who are you?" "Man. Someone who's been waiting for you to open that chest." The flashlight slipped from my shaking hand. Its beam fell across his face. Lined, tired, familiar. I'd seen those eyes before. Not in person. In a photograph, the one Grandma kept hidden. Me, whispering. "Dad?" He nodded once, slow and heavy. I wanted to run to him. to feel safe again. But something in his eyes stopped me. They weren't the eyes of a father finding his child. They were the eyes of a man carrying ghosts. The silence between us. He walked closer, boots crunching on the wet leaves. "You shouldn't have come out here," he said softly. I wanted to scream. "You shouldn't have left," but the words got stuck in my throat. Me. Grandma's gone. Him. Quiet. I know. He said it like he'd already mourned her years ago. The rain began again. Gentle drops on the leaves, like the world whispering around us. I saw him glance at the metal box in my hands. Him. Did she tell you everything? Me. Enough to know she was scared. Him. She had every reason to be. He sat down on the tree's roots. Shoulders slumped, and for a moment I saw not a stranger, but a broken son. His confession, he told me about the years after he ran away. How he'd tried to find Richard Hale, the man who destroyed their lives. He found him, and discovered the truth. Hale had been part of a government task group that did terrible things during the Cold War. He kept documents. The list, Grandma mentioned, proving what they'd done, and my father had stolen it. Thinking he could expose them, they came after me, and when they couldn't find me, they looked for her. That's why I disappeared, to keep you both safe. His voice cracked on the word safe. I felt tears in my eyes. Not from fear this time, but from years of questions finally answered. Me. Why didn't you come back? She waited for you every day. Him, whispering. Because every day, someone was watching her house. He reached into his coat and pulled out a folded photograph. Grandma holding me as a baby. I took this from afar. It's the only thing that kept me alive. What? The weight of love. The wind rustled the branches above us. I thought about Grandma reading that letter every night. Not out of longing, but out of fear and love. She had sacrificed peace to give me a normal childhood. My father had sacrificed himself to keep her hidden, both of them prisoners of the same secret. Me. So, it's over now, right? You're here. The list is gone. Him. No, sweetheart. The list still exists. And now they'll think you have it. The words chilled me. The promise? He looked at me with an ache so deep it almost hurt to meet his gaze. Him. Listen to me. If anything happens to me, you go to the sheriff in Milltown. Tell him my name, Daniel Grace. He'll know. His hands trembled as he gave me a small flash drive, wrapped in tape. Him. Everything's on here. The truth, the names, the proof. Don't open it until you're somewhere safe. I wanted to argue. To tell him I wasn't leaving him again. But then headlights appeared on the distant road. He stood instantly, alert. Him. They found me. 6. The last goodbye. Panic surged in my chest. He turned toward me one last time. Him. Tell her I kept my promise. Me, crying. She already knows. He smiled. Small. Fragile, like Grandma's last smile before she passed. Then he ran toward the road, vanishing into the darkness. A second later, 2 black cars followed. Their engines roared, light slicing through the mist, and then silence. The morning after. I don't know how long I sat under that tree. The sun rose pale and quiet over the fields. When I finally went back inside, the house felt different, emptier, yet somehow lighter. On Grandma's table, the candle had burned itself out. The wax had pooled into the shape of a heart. Narrator, softly. Maybe love never dies. Maybe it just hides, waiting for the right moment to be seen again. I packed the journal, the photos, and the flash drive into my backpack. Before leaving, I whispered into the silence. Thank you, Grandma, for everything you never said, and everything you couldn't. Bow. The sheriff Milltown was 2 hours away by bus. The sheriff's office sat across from an old diner. Inside, An elderly man with gray hair and kind eyes looked up from his desk. Me. I was told to come here. Daniel Grace said you'd know what to do. Sheriff, quietly. Daniel Grace. I haven't heard that name in 20 years. I handed him the flash drive. He plugged it into his computer, his expression shifting from curiosity to shock. Sheriff. Where did he get this? Me. From the past he was running from. He read for a long time, then leaned back, eyes full of sadness. Sheriff. Your grandmother saved lives. You deserve to know that. He explained how the list had exposed illegal experiments on small communities decades ago, and how Evelyn Grace had hidden evidence that could have ruined powerful men. She had been the key witness, and she chose silence to protect her son and me. The truth comes home. I walked out of the sheriff's office into the crisp afternoon air. For the first time, I didn't feel like the child of a mystery. I felt like the descendant of courage. The sky looked brighter somehow. Still, part of me hurt knowing Grandma carried all that pain alone. I wished I could have told her one last time that she was my hero. 10. The final twist that night. I stayed at a small motel. I replayed everything in my head. Grandma's eyes, the letter, my father's face. The world outside was silent. I finally opened my backpack to look at the flash drive again, but it wasn't there. My heart dropped. I tore through my bag. Clothes, journal, photos, gone. Only one thing remained. A note, written in the same handwriting as before. Don't be afraid. The truth is safe now. Live your life, child. Dad. Tears blurred my vision. He had taken it. He was still out there. Maybe running, maybe hiding, but alive. And this time, I understood why. End. The ending that isn't an ending. I returned to Grandma's house weeks later. The snow had melted. The fields were green again. I planted a single rose under the oak tree, the place where the past had ended and the truth had begun. Narrator. Soft, emotional. She raised me in silence, but her love spoke louder than any words. She kept secrets to save me, and in doing so, she gave me the strength to face my own. The camera would fade slowly to the old house, sunlight filtering through the window where Grandma once sat reading. The wind would carry her song, the same soft hum she used to sing while baking bread, and then fade to black. Coming home, I returned to the wooden house one quiet evening. The paint had peeled a little more. The porch swing creaked the same familiar tune. It felt like stepping back into a dream. Inside, everything smelled like dust and old books, but somehow, it didn't feel lonely anymore. Narrator. Grief doesn't leave. It learns to live beside you. I lit a candle on her table, the one she used to read beside. Its flame wavered, and for a heartbeat I almost heard her voice again, humming that same gentle melody. The letter from Milltown a few days later, a letter arrived, stamped Milltown Sheriff's Department. My heart skipped. Inside was a note from the sheriff. Miss Grace, the information your grandmother preserved has finally been made public. Because of her, several innocent families have received justice after 50 years. We thought you should know. I sat on the porch steps, letter trembling in my hands. Grandma's silence had changed. Lives, all those nights she prayed by the window. She hadn't been waiting for forgiveness. She'd been hoping the truth would one day breathe again. The museum visit weeks later. The sheriff invited me to Milltown's Historical Museum. In one corner, they'd set up a small display. Evelyn Grace, the silent witness. Her photograph stood beside the words. She protected what was right, even when it cost her everything. People walked by, reading, whispering her name with respect instead of pity. I couldn't stop the tears. Narrator. The world that once shunned her finally said her name with pride. I placed a single white flower by the photo frame, her favorite lily. Somewhere deep inside, I felt her smile. The message from nowhere that night, back at the motel. The phone in my room rang. A number I didn't know. I hesitated, then answered. Voice, quiet. It's me. Dad? Silence for a heartbeat, then a soft exhale of relief. Him. You're safe. That's all that matters. Me. Where are you? Him. Somewhere the past can't reach. I wanted to beg him to come home, but I knew he wouldn't. Some people carry their punishment as penance, not out of guilt, but out of love. Him. Your grandmother was the bravest person I've ever known. Don't let her story die with her. The line clicked. He was gone again, like wind through cornfields. There and gone before you could catch it. Grandma's hidden notebook back at the house. I started sorting through the attic. In a trunk beneath quilts, I found a small spiral notebook wrapped in lace. The first page began in her careful handwriting. If my grandchild ever reads this, remember, strength isn't about not breaking. It's about breaking quietly and still choosing kindness afterward. The rest of the notebook was filled with recipes, Bible verses, and tiny pieces of advice. Plant flowers even when the frost is near. Forgive before they ask. Write letters you'll never send. Every sentence felt like a hand resting on my shoulder, guiding me toward peace. The decision. I decided to stay. The house was old. Yes, but it was ours. I cleaned every room, painted the porch, planted roses around the oak tree. Neighbors who had once whispered began stopping by, offering pies, small talk, even apologies. I didn't need apologies. I just needed them to remember her as she truly was. Narrator. Sometimes the best revenge is simply living beautifully. I turned the living room into a reading space, filled with her books and framed letters. On the wall, I hung one sentence from her journal. Truth has a way of finding the light. The visitor one evening, while I was watering the garden, an old woman approached the gate. She wore a faded blue shawl and carried a basket of apples. Old woman. You must be Evelyn's girl, me. Granddaughter. Yes, old woman. She saved my brother's life once. He was on that list. Tell her thank you. Wherever she is. My throat tightened. Grandma's. Compassion had stretched farther than I'd ever imagined. Even strangers were living. Proof of her love. The voiceover reflection. For YouTube narration. Narrator. Gentle. Hopeful. When I was a child, I thought my grandmother was poor because she had so little. Now I know she was rich in all the ways that mattered. She taught me that silence can be strength. Forgiveness can be freedom, and truth, no matter how long it hides, will always find its voice. The camera would slowly pan to the oak tree, glowing gold in the sunset. Birds return, just as they did in part 1, completing the circle. A letter to her in the video. This can be read like the final emotional monologue. Dear Grandma, I found your secrets, your pain, your courage. I found the truth you buried under roots and silence. I met the man you tried to protect, your son, my father, and I saw what your sacrifice truly meant. You gave me a childhood free from fear. You gave me a name I could carry with pride. And though you left quietly, your story will never fade. I'll keep your promise, not by hiding, but by living, loving, and speaking when it matters. 10. The legacy years later, people still visit our village. They stop by the oak tree, where a small plaque now reads, "In memory of Evelyn Grace, who kept the light alive." Children play nearby, their laughter blending with birdsong. And sometimes, when the wind passes through the leaves just right, it sounds like her humming, soft, patient, eternal.